thing, then I'll start with a Namo Tassa. Okay. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So welcome to another SVT Dharma talk. And today we're going to look at the talk from the Majjhima Nikāya, number 51. And it's called To Kandaraka. And I do have a link to this from Sutta Central. So if I just pop that in the chat. Okay. Now this sort of is really interesting for a number of reasons, and two of them I particularly want to bring out. First of the one, it's one of the few references I know of where a lay person is describing meditating as the monks meditate. So in other words, using the four foundations of mindfulness. And also, as part of this sutta, there's another framing of the four foundations, another way of working with the four foundations, which is very interesting. It's a different structure to the meditation. So let's begin. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living near Kampa, on the banks of the Gangara lake, with a large Sangha of bhikkhus. Then Pessa, the elephant driver's son, and Kandaraka, the wanderer, went to the Blessed One. Pessa, after paying homage to the Blessed One, sat down at one side, while Kandaraka exchanged greetings with the Blessed One. And when this courteous and amiable talk was finished, he stood at one side. Standing there, he surveyed the Sangha of bhikkhus, sitting in complete silence. And then he said to the Blessed One, "It is wonderful, Master Gautama. It is wonderful how the Sangha of bhikkhus has been led to practice the right way by Master Gautama. And those who were blessed ones, accomplished and fully enlightened in the past, so this is past Buddhas, at most only led the Sangha of bhikkhus to practice the right way, as is done by Master Gautama now. And those who will be blessed ones, accomplished and fully enlightened in the future, so this is future Buddhas, at most will only lead the Sangha of bhikkhus to practice the right way, as is done by Master Gautama now." So what had impressed Kandaraka so much? Well, it may have been the fact that all of the monks were in complete silence and just waiting attentively, because we meet in other suttas descriptions of other sects and other wanderers where it's described as there's a lot of debating going on, there's a lot of noise and a lot of other activity, which seems to be normal or more normal in other sects. So it may have been the silence which made this so clear to Kandaraka. And a good reference for that, for instance, is in Majjhima Nikāya 76, paragraph 4, where it's described how some of the other sects appeared. So it is, Kandaraka, so it is. Those who were blessed ones, accomplished and fully enlightened in the past, at most only led the Sangha of bhikkhus to practice the right way, as is done by me. So the Buddha is confirming that however a past or future Buddha may teach, it will be in a similar way to the way that the Buddha has done. For Kandaraka, in this Sangha of bhikkhus, there are bhikkhus who are arahants with taints destroyed, who have lived the holy life, done what has to be done, laid down the burden, reached the true goal, destroyed the fetters of being, and who are completely liberated through final knowledge. And in this Sangha of bhikkhus, there are bhikkhus in higher training of constant virtue, having a life of constant virtue, sagacious. Sagacious here references their quality of insight and perception. So they're very clear-sighted. Their understanding is good. Living a life of constant sagacity. They abide with their minds well established in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. What for? Here, Kandaraka, a bhikkhu abides contemplating the body as body, ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away covetousness and grief for the world, abides contemplating feelings as feeling, abides contemplating mind as mind, and abides contemplating mind objects as mind objects. Ardent, fully aware and mindful, having put away the covetousness and grief for the world. So this is the classic 4 foundations of mindfulness that are being described here. When this was said, Pessa, the elephant driver's son, said, "It is wonderful, Venerable Sir. It is marvelous how well the 4 foundations of mindfulness have been made known by the Blessed One. For the purification of beings, for the surmounting of sorrow and lamentation, for the disappearance of pain and grief, for the attainment of the true way, for the realization of Nibbana. For, Venerable Sir, we white-clothed lay people also, from time to time, abide with our minds well established in these 4 foundations of mindfulness." So here is a statement of a lay follower following the teaching, the meditation teaching of the Buddha. So this is a lovely reference and one which gives us confidence, if you like, that it's possible to follow this teaching whilst being in a lay life as well. So he then goes on to describe the 4 foundations. It is wonderful, Venerable Sir. It is wonderful how amid man's tangle, corruption, and deceptions, the Blessed One knows the welfare and harm of beings. For humankind is a tangle, but the animal is open enough. Venerable Sir, I can drive an elephant to be tamed, and in the time it takes to make a trip back and forth in Kampa, that elephant will show every kind of deception, duplicity, crookedness, and fraud that they're capable of. So what he's saying here is he only needs a little bit of time with an elephant to see all of the different machinations of their behavior. But those who are called our slaves, messengers, and servants behave in one way with the body, in another way by speech, while their minds work in still another way. It is wonderful, Venerable Sir, it is marvelous how amid man's tangle, corruption, and deceptions, the Blessed One knows the welfare and harm of beings. For humankind is a tangle, but the animal is open enough. So he's kind of implying here there's almost a limitless extent to which the human mind can use guile and deception and all the rest of it, if the circumstances are right. Whereas an elephant is a much more simple proposition. So it is, Pessa, so it is. Humankind is a tangle, but the animal is open enough. Pessa, there are 4 kinds of person to be found existing in the world. What for? There are here a certain kind of person torments themselves and pursues the practices of torturing himself. Here, a certain kind of person torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others. Here, a certain kind of person torments themselves and pursues the practice of torturing themselves. and they also torment others and pursue the practice of torturing others. And finally, the fourth kind of person does not torment themselves or pursue the practice of torturing themselves, and they do not torment others or pursue the practice of torturing others. Since they torment neither themselves nor others, they are here and now, hungerless, extinguished, and cooled, and they abide experiencing bliss, having themselves become holy. And the referencing around this and the commentary on this is saying that this is the bliss of the jhanas here, and the holy aspect is this capacity to have experienced path and fruit through the various stages of development. Which of these four kinds of persons satisfies your mind, Pessa? The first three do not satisfy my mind, Venerable Sir, but the last one does. But Pessa, why don't the first three kinds of persons satisfy your mind? Venerable Sir, the kind of person who torments themselves and pursues the practices of torturing themselves, torments and tortures themselves, though they desire pleasure and recoil from pain. That is why that kind of person does not satisfy my mind. So they feel attachment and aversion, but their training or the path they're doing is one of mortification, if you like, torturing themselves. And the kind of person who torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others, torments and tortures others who desire pleasure and recoil from pain. That is why this kind of person does not satisfy my mind. So all beings desire pleasure and wish to avoid pain. And so to torture any living being who has these desires is also not a path that's going to provide any fruit. And the kind of person who torments others and pursues the practice of torturing, oh, I've done that. And the kind of person who torments themselves and pursues the practice of torturing themselves, and who also torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others, torments and tortures themselves and others, both of whom desire pleasure and recoil from pain. That is why this kind of person does not satisfy my mind. But the kind of person who does not torment themselves or pursue the practice of torturing themselves, and who does not torment others or pursue the practice of torturing others, who, since they torment neither themselves nor others, is here and now, hungerless, extinguished, and cooled, and abides experiencing bliss, having themselves become holy, they do not torment and torture either themselves or others, both of which desire pleasure and recoil from pain. That is why this kind of person satisfies my mind. And now, Venerable Sir, we depart. We are busy and have much to do. You may go, Pessa, at your convenience, said the Buddha. Then Pessa, the elephant driver's son, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's words, arose from his seat, and after paying homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he departed. Soon after he had left, the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, Pessa, the elephant driver's son, is wise. He has great wisdom. If he had sat a while longer until I had expounded for him in detail these four kinds of persons, he would have greatly benefited. Still, he has already greatly benefited, even as it is. This is the time, Blessed One. This is the time, Sublime One, for the Blessed One to expound in detail these four kinds of persons. Having heard it from the Blessed One, the bhikkhus will remember it. Then, bhikkhus, listen and attend closely to what I shall say. Yes, Venerable Sir, the bhikkhus replied. The Blessed One said this. Okay. So then the Buddha describes a whole range of ascetic practices and more ways of mortifying the body. Many of them that he practiced himself before his enlightenment. And what he said is, in these ways, there is such a variety of ways that a person dwells pursuing the practice of tormenting and mortifying their body. This is called the kind of person who torments themselves and pursues the practice of torturing themselves. So I've just skipped over that because it's quite a long sutta, and there are other points that are coming through, which I think we'd like to look at in more detail. What kind of person, students or bhikkhus, torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others? Here, a certain person is a butcher of sheep, pigs, a fowler, a trapper of wild beasts, a hunter, a fisherman, a thief, an executioner, a prison warden, or one who follows any other such bloody occupation. This is called the kind of person who torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others. And what kind of person, students, torments himself and pursues the practice of torturing himself and also torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others? So what here he describes is that a person who is a head-anointed noble king or a well-to-do Brahmin, having had a new sacrificial temple built into the east of the city, and having shaved off their hair and beard, dressed in rough hide, and greasing their body with ghee and oil, scratching their back with a deer's horn, enters the sacrificial temple together with their chief queen and their Brahmin high priest. There he lies down on the bare ground, strewn with grass. The king lives on the milk of the first teat of a cow with a calf of the same color, while the chief queen lives on the milk of the second teat, and the Brahmin high priest lives on the milk of the third teat. The milk of the fourth teat they pour onto the fire, and the calf lives on what is left. He says thus, let so many bulls be slaughtered for sacrifice. Let so many bullocks be slaughtered for sacrifice. Let so many heifers be slaughtered for sacrifice. Let so many goats be slaughtered for sacrifice. Let so many sheep be slaughtered for sacrifice. Let so many trees be felled for the sacrificial posts. Let so much grass be cut for the sacrificial grass. And then his slaves, messengers, and servants make preparations, weeping with tearful faces, being spurred on by threats of punishment and fear. This is called the kind of person who torments himself and pursues the practice of torturing himself, and who torments others and pursues the practice of torturing others. So here the king torments his own body in the hope of gaining merit and offers sacrifice by killing the animals. And so what is the fourth type of person? What kind of person, students, does not torment themselves or pursue the practice of torturing themselves, and does not torment others or pursue the practice of tormenting others? The one who, since they torment neither themselves or others, is here and now hungerless, extinguished and cooled, and abides experiencing bliss, having themselves become holy. Here, students, a Tathagata appears in the world, accomplished and fully enlightened, perfect in true knowledge and conduct, sublime, knower of the world's incomparable leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, enlightened, blessed. He declares this world with its gods, its maras, and its brahmas, this generation with its reclusives and brahmins, its princes and its people, which he has himself realized by direct knowledge. He teaches the Dharma good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. With the right meaning and phrasing, he reveals a holy life that is utterly perfect and pure. So the first thing is that the teaching of the Dharma needs to be present in the world. Then a householder or householder's son or one born in some other clan hears that Dharma. On hearing that Dharma, they acquire faith in the Tathagata. Possessing this faith, they consider thus: a householder life is crowded and dusty. Life gone forth is wide open. It is not easy, while living in a home, to lead the holy life, utterly perfect and pure as a polished shell. Suppose I shave off my hair and beard, put on a yellow robe, and go forth from the home life into the homelessness. On a later occasion, abandoning a small or large fortune, abandoning a small or large circle of relatives, they shave off their hair and beard and put on the yellow robe and go forth from the home life into homelessness. So what needs to be present is a teacher of the Dharma, and then the hearing of the Dharma. And then, having gone forth and possessing the student's training and way of life, then there's certain things that need to have occurred. Abandoning the killing of living beings, they abstain from killing living beings with rod and weapon laid aside. Conscientious, merciful, they abide compassionate to all living beings. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, they abstain from taking what is not given, taking only what is given, expecting only what is given. By not stealing, they abide in purity. Abandoning incelibacy, they observe celibacy. Living apart, abstaining from the common practice of sexual intercourse. So here's the first three precepts, which were familiar in a lay context, perhaps when we go on retreat. And then what's very interesting here in this passage, next passage, is the fourth precept. There's a very large description of the four precepts. Abandoning false speech. They abstain from false speech. They speak truth, adhere to truth. They're trustworthy and reliable, one who is no deceiver of the world. Abandoning malicious speech. They abstain from malicious speech. They do not repeat elsewhere what has been heard here in order to divide those people from these, nor do they repeat to these people what they have heard elsewhere in order to divide these people from those. Thus, they are one who reunites those who are divided, a promoter of friendships, one who enjoys concord, rejoices in concord, delights in concord, a speaker of words that promote concord. Abandoning harsh speech, they abstain from harsh speech. They speak such words as are gentle, pleasing to the ear, and lovable, as go to the heart, are courteous, desired by many, and agreeable to many. Abandoning gossip. They abstain from gossip. They speak at the right time, speak what is factual, speak on what is good, speak on the Dharma and the discipline. At the right time, they speak such words as are worth recording, reasonable, moderate, and beneficial. So here's a really lovely exposition of right speech. And it's very interesting that the first three precepts are perhaps described in 8 lines, and we must have at least 16 or more lines here on just right speech. And this kind of, for me, puts an emphasis on how important it is to be very much aware of how our speech, or what the way that we speak and the motivation behind our speech. And then the next section is very much for the ordained bhikkhu and not for laity. They abstain from injuring seeds and plants. They practice eating one meal a day, abstaining from eating at night and outside the proper time. They abstain from dancing, singing, music and theatrical shows. They abstain from wearing garlands, smartening themselves with scent and embellishing themselves with unguents. So unguents are beautiful skin care and things like this, which allow a fragrant appearance. He abstains from high and large couches, and they abstain from accepting gold and silver. They abstain from accepting raw grain, from accepting raw meat, from accepting women and girls, from accepting men and women slaves, of accepting goats and sheep, accepting fowl and pigs. They abstain from accepting elephants, cattle, horses and mares. They abstain from accepting fields and land. They abstain from going on errands and running messages. They abstain from buying and selling. They abstain from false weights, false metals, and false measures. They abstain from accepting bribes, deceiving, defrauding, and trickery. They abstain from wounding, murdering, binding, brigandage, plunder, and violence. So here's a description, perhaps quite an early description of what the rules behind the monks were before the whole of the Vinaya was developed. Maybe this was the basic requirements. And then they become content with robes to protect their body and with alms food to maintain their stomach. And wherever they go, they set out taking only these with them, just like a bird. Whenever it goes, or wherever it goes, flies with its wings as its only burden. So too, the student becomes content with robes to protect their body and with alms food to maintain their stomach. And wherever they go, they set out taking only these things with them. Possessing this aggregate of noble virtue, they experience within themselves a bliss that is blameless. So this is the description of virtuous behavior, setting out a standard, if you like, for those who are ordained and following the Buddha's teaching. So this is the basic. Virtue is the first step. And I think this is the interesting construction that comes through in this practice. Virtue, sila. And we have this triplet already. Sila, samadhi, so we have sila, samadhi, and panya, and we have dana, sila, and bhavana. So these triplets are already in the Pali Canon. So we have sila being virtue, samadhi being collectedness, and panya being wisdom. And we have dana, which is generosity or giving, sila, virtue, and bhavana, mental development. And now we have this a fourfold description coming, where the first of them is sila, virtue, and the second one is on seeing a form with the eye, he does not grasp at its signs and features, since if they left the eye faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade them. They practice the way of its restraint. They guard the eye faculty. They understand the restraint of the eye faculty. So what is this restraint? Well, if evil, unwholesome things arise, Bhante Ramsey had a wonderful description of what is unwholesome. And he would say the unwholesome is when we take our experience personally. So It doesn't always have to be bad things, but it's things that cause us to be drawn away from that clear comprehension, understanding how things arise, how they persist, and how they disappear, and seeing their causality, seeing how when there's contact, there's feeling, and when feeling comes, then there comes craving, and when craving arrives, then clinging comes, and when clinging arrives, then we get pancha, for instance, perceptions of and notions of the proliferating mind. So this second strand of this behavior is about guarding the senses. And he goes on to similarly describe how we should treat sounds with the ear, smells and odors with the nose, tastes with the tongue, and tangibles with the body. And of course, in Buddhism, there is 6 senses and not 5, because there's the mind as well. So on cognizing a mind object with the mind, they do not grasp at its signs and features. Since if they left their mind faculty unguarded, evil, unwholesome states of covetousness and grief might invade them. They practice the way of its restraint. They guard the mind faculty. They understand the restraint of the mind faculty. Possessing this noble restraint of the faculties, they experience within themselves a bliss that is unsullied. So by being aware of when the tension arises, and that tension is caused by the covetousness or the grief in response to the experience of the senses. So this holding on, covetousness, wanting to hold on and have more, or the grief wanting something to go away, this is expressed as tension in the body. And so with the practice of the 6 R's, we're releasing away from that tension. And when we do that, we're undertaking restraint of the faculties, because we're no longer being caught up by identifying with the experience that we're receiving from those faculties. And remember, the faculties, when they arise, whatever arises in the faculties, we're not in control of. This is an impersonal process. What is personal, so the contact and the presence of the feeling, is impersonal. So it can be a pleasant or an unpleasant or a neither pleasant or unpleasant feeling. None of that is under our control. But what is under our control is the next step. Do we attach to, or are we aversive to, that feeling? And that's craving. That's the I like it, I don't like it mind. And then with the craving comes the clinging, which is the story about why we like it or don't like it. And with the story, then we get the proliferation of thought, and it's like the starting of a whirlwind that gradually sucks us in as we begin to develop the story around why we like it and don't like it. And then the habitual tendencies begin to become expressed. So if we're to avoid that evil, unwholesome process driven by identification with our experience, taking it personally, then we need to guard our faculties. We need to see the arising of tension, which it comes from whatever the experience, from whichever of the faculties that comes. And then, so that was the second one, the guarding of the faculties. We had the virtue, developing virtue, and guarding the faculties. They become one who act in full awareness. So what is this full awareness? It's seeing this arising of this tension. It's seeing the presence or absence of craving. When going forward and returning, act in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away. Act in full awareness when flexing and extending their limbs. Act in full awareness when wearing their robes and carrying their outer robe and bowl. Act in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting. Act in full awareness when defecating and urinating. Act in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking, and keeping silent. Basically saying, it's our responsibility to be sensitive to this arising of tension in anything and everything that we do. And this is one of the really strong teachings of the Buddha, is to recognize that we can carry this awareness irrespective of what we're doing. So how is it, can we do it when we're talking? Well, we can see when the arising of tension is there. And then what do? Well, the 6 R's are about releasing away from that tension. We recognize the tension's there. We release away from whatever's stimulating that tension. We relax around our brain and in our body, and we softly smile and come back to being present to what we're doing. So if we're not formally meditating, we may be present in the conversation. Possessing this aggregate of noble virtue and this noble restraint of the faculties, and possessing this noble mindfulness and full awareness. Now, here are 3 foundations. They resort to a secluded resting place, the forest, the root of a tree, a mountain, a ravine, a hillside cave, a charnel ground, a jungle thicket, an open space, a heap of straw. On returning from their alms round, after their meal, they sit down, folding legs crosswise, setting the body upright and establishing mindfulness in front of them. Abandoning covetousness for the world, they abide with a mind free of covetousness. They purify their mind of covetousness, abandoning ill will and hatred. They abide with a mind free of ill will, compassionate for the welfare of all beings. They purify their mind from ill will and hatred. Abandoning sloth and torpor, they abide free from sloth and torpor, percipient of light, mindful and fully aware. They purify their mind from sloth and torpor. Abandoning restlessness and remorse, they abide unagitated with a mind inwardly peaceful. They purify their mind from restlessness and remorse. Abandoning doubt, they abide having gone beyond doubt, unperplexed about wholesome states. They purify their mind of doubt. So, unperplexed about wholesome states. What we have here, so it goes on to say, thus, abandoning these 5 hindrances, imperfections of the mind that weaken wisdom. So what we have here is we're unperplexed about wholesome states, because the hindrances are all the ways that we can move into unwholesome states. So if we're to be unperplexed about a wholesome state, one of the ways is working with the 6 R's, because we then see much more clearly when unwholesome states arise. And remember what Bhante Brahmaramsa's description of the unwholesome state was? It's when the mind takes something personally. So all of the hindrances, the covetousness, the ill will, the hatred, the sloth and torpor, the restlessness and remorse, and the doubt, these all come from a mind that takes things personally. Thus, having abandoned these 5 hindrances, imperfections of the mind that weaken wisdom, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unwholesome states, they enter upon and abide in the first jhana, which is accompanied by applied and sustained thought with rapture and pleasure born of seclusion. So what we have here is the 4th strand. And first we had virtue, developing virtue. Then we had the restraint of the faculties. Then we had developing awareness. So seeing, acting in full awareness, seeing what we're doing and seeing when tension arises and not. And then finally, we have the abandoning of the hindrances, seeing how the hindrances arise when we take things personally. So this is another framework for, if you like, the 4 foundations for practice: virtue, strain to the senses, establishing mindfulness and full awareness, and working with the hindrances. The consequence of that is we move through the jhanas. And then the Buddha then describes how when that is developed, we're able to choose to explore past lives, and then choose to explore the verification of karma. And then with the end, having done that, we then, with their mind concentrated and thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of imperfection, malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability, they direct their knowledge to the destruction of the taints. They understand as it actually is. This is suffering. This, he understands as it actually is. This is the origin of suffering. They understand as it actually is. This is the cessation of suffering. They understand as it actually is. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. They understand as it actually is. These are the taints. They understand as it actually is. This is the origin of the taints. They understand as it actually is. This is the cessation of the taints. They understand as it actually is. This is the way leading to the cessation of the taints. When they know and see thus, their mind is liberated from the taint of sensual desire, from the taint of being, and from the taint of ignorance. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. They understand birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, and what had to be done has been done, and there is no more coming to any state of being. So the taints here that are destroyed are the taints of sensual desire, the taint of being, wishing to be or wishing not to be, and the taint of ignorance. And the ignorance here is the fundamental ignorance of the 4 noble truths, that suffering arises, that suffering exists, that suffering has a cause, that it has a means to its cessation, and that there's a path to it. The seeing anicca, dukkha, and anatta, so to see impermanence, to see the cause of suffering. And the cause of suffering can be because we reject the impermanence of things. So things we want to persist, we hold on to rather than recognizing that they will be here for a while and change. Or things that we don't like, we think are going to stay rather than realizing that they're impermanent. So this is the cause of dukkha. But dukkha also comes from anatta, or from atta, from taking things personally. Anatta is recognizing the impersonal nature of experience. And then finally, the cause of ignorance is also not recognizing causality, not seeing that the chain of causality comes from identifying with the pleasant, the unpleasant, and the neutral, and how that then just brings through in our experience. The I like it, I don't like it mind, the stories about why we like it and don't like it, and then all of the habitual tendencies we have around those stories. With the final taint, giving up this ignorance, this final stage, we give up the confusion and delusion that we have around these aspects of understanding. This, students, is called the kind of person who does not torment themselves or pursue the practice of torturing himself or themselves, or who does not torment others or pursue the practice of torturing others. The one who, since they torment neither themselves nor others, is here and now, hungerless, extinguished, and cooled, and abides experiencing bliss, having themselves become holy. This is what the Blessed One said. The students were satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So, in summary, what we have here is a recognition that the lay people can practice the foundations of mindfulness with good effect. And also to recognize that we can view the practice from this other perspective, the perspective of virtue, of guarding the senses, of remaining aware in everything that we do, and in our relationship to the hindrances. So maybe just take a few moments now to allow whatever you've experienced and heard from this discourse just to settle in your mind. Gently smile. Softly rotate your inner thighs to let your hips release, let your lower back open up. Drop the inner edge of the shoulder blades, let there be space around your heart. Let your spine come into balance. Relax any holding and bracing around your brain and gently smile. Bring up the feeling of loving kindness. Allow that feeling to be there. And just say to yourself, may I be well, may I be joyful, may I be happy. May my mind be peaceful and calm and open. And my heart open, joyful, and accepting. Feel your seat on the chair or the floor. Sense of connection with the ground. Take a deliberate breath in and out. And in your own time, gently open your eyes. Okay, so any questions or any comments or anything that came to mind as we were going through? So, any comments? So I see something coming through here from Pi. That if Pessa had stayed, the Buddha said it would have been a great benefit for him. And in the commentaries, it says that he would have become a stream enterer. So one of the things the commentary says that Pessa got from this encounter with the Buddha was it really enhanced his faith in the teaching. He was clearly a very committed student anyway. And the characteristic of these 4 different characters, these ways of behavior, he was already of the opinion that the only one that was any value was the 4th. And there at the time of the Buddha, there would have been innumerable practices around mortifying the flesh and austere practices and asceticism. And perhaps his mind, Pessa's mind, still had some connection to that, or perhaps to the rites and rituals around that were described by the king in celebrating the development of a new temple. So there might have been aspects of that which would have been just enough for Pessa to develop the insight to become a stream enterer. But the Buddha also said that he's already got a lot of benefit from this exchange. So by already suggesting these 4 different characters and asking Pessa which he found satisfying, that process in itself probably sent a train of thought in Pessa's mind. So thank you for the comment there, Pai, and also the observation, which means anyone could understand what followed. Yes, anyone could understand what the Buddha described, but Pessa had the advantage of actually practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So he was already, if you like, heading in that direction. Anything else anyone would like to add? Thank you for those comments, Pai.
Thank you, Hugh. Just a small comment. I think this perspective of looking at 4 foundations is a little bit easier to follow compared to like the conventional way, which is like, mindful of the body, mindful of feeling, mindful of thought, mind and mind objects. Sometimes that can be a little bit like hard to comprehend, from a, let's say, day-to-day practice perspective, especially in lay life. So this is, I think, more easier to comprehend, easier to apply, and also closer to what we've always been, studying and practicing about. So thank you for that.
Yes,
I raised a hand.
Yes, I thank you for those comments, May. I agree. The sort of the classical reading of the Satipatthana Sutta, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, sometimes it feels very theoretical. So one of the ways I'd like to look at it is that mindfulness of the body, well, that's what gives us awareness of attention. So tension is a somatic feeling. The feeling is in the body. So mindfulness of body gives us this awareness. And then we have mindfulness of feeling. Well, what's that giving us? That's giving us the body has the senses. Senses produce the contact. The feeling comes from the contact. So if we're aware of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, it's tuning us in to the presence of the craving. So then we've got this process of seeing the arising of the tension, the feeling. Then we have the mind, awareness of mind. Well, this is seeing the I like it, I don't like it response. So this is seeing craving. And then we've got in the last stage of mind objects, we have the hindrances and the foundation, the hindrances and the bhujangas. I've just forgotten the English for that. It's the the seven balancing the aspects for enlightenment. So that's the investigation, it's the energy, it's the mindfulness, it's the tranquility, it's the collectedness, it's the equanimity. So what we've got there in the 4 stages in the Satipatthana is mindfulness of the body, gives us awareness of the tension. And we have the feeling, which is tuning us into the presence of initiating craving. We have minds, which sees the craving arise. And then we have mind objects, which is the consequence of that craving, which if we don't address it, is the hindrances. But if we do address it, is balancing the aspects of enlightenment. So we can kind of see it as also in the context of dependent origination. The senses producing the feeling, producing the craving, producing the hindrances, or the balancing of the factors of enlightenment. So that's another way of looking at it as well. So yeah, thank you for that comment. I do like this sutta, the way that we have virtue, and then we have guarding of the senses, and then we have awareness, and then we have our relationship to the hindrances. And like you say, it seems more relevant in our daily lives. Good. So hello, Sachin. How are you doing? Maybe not there at the moment. Hello, Paul. How are you doing? How did you find the sutta?
Yes, I enjoyed that talk very much, especially like you mentioned, comparing it to MN10, the Satipatthana. Yeah, it's much more relatable because I have been struggling with MN10.
Yep. Yeah. So I thought when I found it, I thought that's something we can work with very easily there. And I wonder also whether the Buddha recognized that as well in the talk, because he had Pessa there talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And I wonder whether he thought, oh, maybe there's an easier or more accessible way of describing that, and went on to do so. Because although Pessa had left, the wanderer was still there, and he may not have been familiar with the actual core teaching of the Buddha. So anything that makes the teaching more relatable, I think, is really, really helpful. So thank you for your comments there, Paul. And Nanda, anything you'd like to add?
Hugh, that's a brilliant talk. As Paul said, I'm very grateful to you for linking Majjhima Nikāya 10 to Majjhima Nikāya 15. It is great. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, well, thank you. And can I just ask you, what was it you found about this sutta that was most helpful?
Well, as you said, linking the 4 foundations explained in Majjhima Nikāya 10, as you said, it is kind of a theoretical, and putting that into action practice with the practice of Twin 6R, and then going through the jhanas and experiencing the samadhi state, and experiencing the insights and experience the pure awareness. I thought that that's really, really beautiful here. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for your comments. And Pai, do you have anything else you'd like to add? Okay, Pai's just messaging. Ah, nice. Yes, a nice comment here from Pai, saying that it's a really useful reminder when the Buddha says not to grasp at the signs and features. Although Pai says this is something that they do all the time, I think we can all relate to that. Our temptation is to grab at the signs and features of any sensory impact. Now, the temptation here is to say, I don't want any sensory impact. And that's not what the Buddha's saying here. Remember, on other suttas, the Buddha says that our khandhas, which include all of our senses and our perception and our feeling and our consciousness and all of the sankharas, all of the mental volitional states and our body, he said that if we understand our relationship to clinging, then the khandhas become for our welfare and happiness. And so what is it that we need to understand about clinging? And it is this useful reminder not to grasp, because clinging is this grasping at the signs and features. And so when we don't grasp, we don't take them personally, as Pai has just messaged there. And when we don't take them personally, then the khandhas are for our welfare and happiness. And remember, the Buddha described the order of the Sangha, the order of monks and nuns, as feeders on joy are we. So he didn't have a sort of a negative perspective on comfortable states. It's just holding on to them. So ease and comfort and joy. We should eat, for instance, for the welfare and ease of the body, but not hold on to the signs and features of what it is that we're tasting or eating. So this is a really subtle teaching here that Pai's just brought up. It's our responsibility to understand what it means to grasp at the signs and features. And the temptation is to banish, and that's not what the Buddha was saying. Because remember, the Buddha said this is a middle path. It's not a process of asceticism. He went through all of those practices and found that they didn't deliver the freedom and release that he was looking for. Okay, so really nice points there. And Sachin, I don't know if you want to add anything further.
If you I would like to ask one question also.
Yes.
They were mentioning in Sutta the 4 aspects of meditation, like body, mind, feelings, and principles. Exactly, can you elaborate on these things?
Do you mean the 4 foundations of mindfulness?
Basically, there are 4 foundation of mindfulness. No.
Okay. So what we've got here is a slightly different presentation. It's also a 4-fold presentation. And what's being presented here, which is, if you like, a different presentation going to the same end, is that the first thing to look after is virtue, is sila. Sila is a foundation stone. And with sila comes the capacity to be more aware of what the faculties are doing. How does that occur? Well, when we put Sila in place, it doesn't come automatically. We have to make an effort. And in the effort, it comes with us seeing our actions and reactions. So we need, in order to see our actions and reactions, we need to have the awareness of our sense faculties. So the development of the sense faculties comes from the commitment for virtuous behavior. And with that virtuous awareness of the faculties, we then become much more aware of our the actual awareness of our actions in the body and in the mind. And with that, we then begin to see what drives those actions in the body and mind. And that's the hindrances, or aspects of behavior are the hindrances. So then we begin to tune into the hindrances as well. And so this awareness is a different perspective on the four foundations of mindfulness, and in some respects are more relatable to our experience in daily life. Once we begin to get the hindrances in perspective, then we start balancing the faculties of enlightenment. That's when the mindfulness starts to really take over. We're already doing the investigation. So, the awareness of the faculties, the awareness of the hindrances, this is investigation. With that investigation, we build energy. With that energy comes a tranquility. And with that tranquility comes the collectedness and comes the equanimity. So one of the and also the joy, there's joy in there as well. And these are the 7 factors of enlightenment. So as we begin to bring the hindrances into perspective, the faculties of enlightenment start to balance. And of course, it's not possible to move through the jhanas with the hindrances present. So as we temporarily bring the hindrances into balance, so we experience the jhanas. As we become more familiar with doing that, we're building this relationship to the hindrances as a more coherent aspect of the way our mind becomes aware. So was it from that perspective that your question was?
Actually, just I would like to just share this screen so that just I would like to know that here they are talking about even I was thinking that they are talking about meditation aspects also. I thought like it's when a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of body, in the sense whether they are having a body contemplation. This is the first part, and they observe the mind with the feelings.
Yep.
And they meditate observing a mind, which we do generally, like feelings. Yep. And mind we have known. Body means can we assume that it is because of body contemplation?
Well, body contemplation, I mean, in the Satipatthana, it describes the basis of breathing. So it's an anapanasati practice. But as Bhante Viramsey brought out very clearly in his teaching, is that the aspect of MN10 is that breathing in, you breathe in. You breathe in long, you breathe in long. Breathing in short, you're breathing in short. Breathing in, you tranquilize the bodily formation. So that body contemplation is awareness of the bodily formation. And the bodily formation is the whole of our somatic experience. And so when you tranquilize the bodily formation, what you're looking to do is to release away from the tension, however it's expressed in your body. So the invitation there is, as you breathe in, relax your bodily formation. As you breathe out, relax your bodily formation. And interestingly, in the Satipatthana Sutta, it doesn't talk about the mental formation. That's in another sutta. So here, in the Satipatthana Sutta, we're looking at what can body teach us? How can body support the meditation? So we have the awareness of the breath if we're doing anapanasati. but we have this critical awareness of tranquilizing the bodily formation. When we're looking at feeling, it's a question of understanding whether our feeling is pleasant, our feeling is unpleasant, or our feeling is neither pleasant or unpleasant. Now, when it's pleasant, the temptation is for covetousness, to hold on to it. When it's unpleasant, the temptation is for aversion. And when it's neither pleasant or unpleasant, our temptation is for it's just to disregard it, is to ignore it. It's not clear. And so the temptations here are attachment, aversion, or to ignore it. Whereas what the Buddha is asking us to see is see the pleasant, see the unpleasant, and see the equanimity in the neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And so this is inviting us to see much more clearly what's going on. And when we do that, then we see, if we see the disinterest, or if we're disinterested in the feeling because it's not one thing or the other, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, then the temptation is to move into ignorance, not to be aware of what's going on. Whereas if we can see it as equanimity, we don't do that. We're aware of this equanimous state. And if we're aware of a pleasant state, then we can see the temptation for craving to arise, which is the I like it, I don't like it, the I like it part. And then if we see the aversion, we see the temptation to move into the I don't like it. So the I like it, I don't like it, and the boredom or disinterest, these are states of mind, which is the third of the 4 satipatthanas. So now we're tuning into the state of mind. And if we're not careful, if we're caught by attachment or aversion or disinterest, we move into the hindrances, which is the 4th satipatthana. But if we are aware of the pleasant mind and the unpleasant mind and the equanimity without the attachment, then we move into balancing the factors of enlightenment, which are also in the 4th factor of mindfulness. So we can see here that we can move through the 4 stages of mindfulness by simply working with causality. We're seeing dependent origination. That's another way of looking at the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Okay.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
okay.
Yes.
Okay. No. Okay. Anything else anyone would like to add?
I think in this sutta, do you think the attention, full giving attention to feelings and sensations, and therefore I become aware that I'm, as you said, grabbing and clinging to sensations and feelings. And therefore, when I simply observe, I'm coming out of that clinging state into pure awareness. Is my understanding right?
Whenever we drop the clinging, and we can do that using the 6 R's, it invites the mind to come into this clear awareness. Yeah. And Bhante Vimramsi often would say that the process of the 6 R's, the recognizing, the releasing, the relaxing, the re-smiling, and the returning, brought us back or invited the mind to come into a sort of mundane experience of nibbana, It's not the super mundane, but for a moment we've given up the craving and the clinging. So we've got the clear-sightedness. The challenge for us is sometimes, you know, the mind gets caught again almost immediately. So I think you're right in your question that, you know, the relationship to this clinging is what we need to look at very carefully, because that's what gives us this clear-sightedness. Please come back on that if you want to make any other point on there, Nanda. Does that sound?
That's brilliant, Hugh. That's
Okay.
excellent. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Okay. So anything from yourself, May?
Not really, and I enjoy the discussions, and it's very clear. So this sutta is really, as everyone has said, a good way to see how to practice 4 foundations of mindfulness in our daily lives.
Well, I think that's a very good summary. So if there's anyone else who'd like to say anything, please do. Otherwise, let's just share the merits. Okay. So, may suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So thank you very much. It's been a delight to talk to you all again, and I look forward to the next time we get to do this.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you, May.
Hope
Bye
everything
now.
goes well. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
All happiness.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.